Hello, I'm Dave Bosworth and welcome to this overview of the new features in Autodesk Civil 3D 2019 and associated infrastructure design tools. I think it's fair to say that we're not overwhelmed with new functionality in Civil 3D this time around, but this should be seen very much as a platform on which Autodesk can continue to make incremental improvements throughout the next year. So, for Civil 3D, the Object Enabler now has built into it an Export to Autocad function. This means that Autocad users who have the Object Enabler installed can now open a Civil 3D model and create an Autocad version of it without having to open the file in Civil 3D. For design profiles, Autodesk have added a couple of new profile curve options, and we'll also take a look at how Civil 3D can be used with the new Autocad collaboration tools for shared views and draw and compare. When using Civil 3D with InfraWorks, we have some new functionality which enables the importing of InfraWorks component roads directly to Civil 3D corridor models. And finally, with Autodesk Vehicle Tracking, where we have some extended options for defining roundabout splitter islands, and also some options for exit and entry lane crossfall transitions. So let's take a look at the Object Enabler functionality with AutoCAD. We've got a Civil 3D model open in AutoCAD 2019 here, and you can see that we can select items like the Civil 3D labels and move them around, and they retain some of their intelligence, although of course you can't create new objects. Now built into the Object Enabler, we have the Export to AutoCAD function. This command of course also exists in Civil 3D to enable users to export a Civil 3D model to plain AutoCAD objects. Now any AutoCAD user with the Object Enabler installed can export a Civil 3D model to an AutoCAD drawing with native AutoCAD entities. So we've just run the command and saved this AutoCAD version of it, and when we open that we can see that if we zoom in it looks identical to the Civil 3D model. But you'll notice that the contours here are polylines, this pipe here is also a polyline, and we now have an AutoCAD version of a Civil 3D model. If I look at the labels here, you can see they're just plain AutoCAD text. And if I pan over to the profile views, you can see these have also been exploded down to individual entities. So this is a really useful tool when you need to share a Civil 3D model with AutoCAD users who don't have access to a Civil 3D license. The next item we're going to look at is the enhancements made to design profiles in Civil 3D 2019. So here we have a profile view, and I'm just going to create a new design profile. On the Curves button on the toolbar, we have two new items: Fixed Vertical Curve Parabolic by High-Low Point and Fixed Vertical Curve Circular by High-Low Point. I'm going to use a parabolic curve, and I can place this curve by selecting a high or low point that I want the curve to pass through. In this case I'm using a high point, and we can define the curve by choosing the option for a k value and entering the required k value and give it a length. The curve is constrained by its high-low point, and we can move it around choosing the position for the high point, and if I drag the start point out like this you can see it extends both sides symmetrically. If I select the curve and inspect it in the layout parameters, you can see you get the option to change the k value, the length, the radius, or the high-low point. So we'll just place another curve to show you how these curves can be used in a profile design. This time I'm going to place a sag curve at the bottom here, and again I'll give it a k value and a length. We can reset any of these values using the layout parameters, or of course we can edit them graphically as I am here. So I'm just going to drag the curve lengths out. We don't need to use the curve extend function on the toolbar. I'm going to amend the k values of these curves using the layout parameters so that the two curves don't intersect each other. I can now place a free tangent between these two curves to link them both together. So this gives you some idea of how you might use these new high-low parabolic or circular curve types. Now let's take a look at the new tools for collaboration that have been added to AutoCAD 2019 and see how they work for Civil 3D. This is the Shared Views tool, which enables us to publish a view of the Civil 3D model in the cloud, share it with others, without the need to subscribe to BIM 360 Docs or Team. When I create a new view, I can choose to share the current view or both model and layout views. I can share both 2D and 3D views for the model as well as the layouts, and I can include all of the object properties. The views will be processed in the background, so we can continue working while the view is being published, and when the view is ready, it will appear in the Shared Views palette when I refresh it. If I now click on the shared view, it will open up in a web browser using the Autodesk Viewer tool. So let's first take a look at the 2D view. As we move around this view, you can see that it is a faithful reproduction of my Civil 3D 2D model view. So here's some of the tools that are available to us in the viewer. First of all, the Layers tool. We get a palette with all the layers listed in them, and we can turn off individual layers or we can isolate layers. So for example, if I want to just isolate the corridors, I can select the corridors layer and just isolate that one particular layer. We can actually do a similar thing in Canvas. So if I just zoom in to an area here and select the XREF, you'll see I can isolate it or I could hide it just by right-clicking in the canvas. We can interrogate the properties of objects in the viewer using the Properties panel. So I can select the Civil 3D pipe, for example, and you can see that in the Properties panel I have all the properties of that Civil 3D pipe, just the same as I would have if I interrogated that pipe inside Civil 3D. Of course, you can't edit or modify any of those properties in that panel. Let's take a look at the corridor. You'll notice that we have all of the baseline and region information for the corridor, again just the same as we do in Civil 3D. If I pan across and have a look at the profiles, I'm going to zoom into this profile here, and when I select it, again in the Properties panel I can view all the entity information for all of the components of that profile. Okay, we'll just close that down and go back to our plan area. We also have some other tools for interrogating the model, these measure tools for example. I can measure a distance. Notice that the tool automatically snaps to the endpoints that I select. The dimension there is indicated as being approximate, simply because the precision in the viewer is not the same precision as in an AutoCAD drawing. We can also measure angles and select areas. I can use the screenshot tool to capture an image of this. The image appears here in the screenshots, and you'll notice the download button so that I can download and save that image. For markup and review, we have two tools available to us. We have this markup tool here and also a comments tool. If I use the comments tool, it will grab an image of the current view, and I can type my comment in the comment box here, and when I post that comment it'll be available for everybody else to see and also comment on. If I run the markup tool, I can select the pen size that I want to use. Here we've got a revision cloud feature where I can draw a cloud either as a polygon or in this case a rectangle. Notice the grips that enable you to drag it around after you've created it. I can put some text directly into the view using the text tool. and we can highlight the area that's referring to simply by using the arrow tool and placing an arrow in the view. Once I save that, that view is saved together with my markup so that other people can review it. So if we switch now to the 3D view, we can see a rendered 3D view of our model space, and it does look very similar to what I would expect to see if I was actually inside Civil 3D looking at a view of the model. Using the model browser tool, we can see the entities in the model, including all of the Civil 3D entities. Here I'm using the tool to turn off the XREF layer. You can also turn off individual Civil 3D objects using the model browser. Again, looking at the properties panel, I can select, for example here, the corridor and see the same properties that I see in the 2D view. And you'll notice down on the bottom bar we also have this first person tool that gives me a perspective walkthrough type view, and I can use the mouse and keyboard to navigate through the view. It is quite difficult to control, however, and it can be rather slow. We also have this section tool, which enables us to section the model in various planes. So if we just get back to a larger view and section this in the X plane, you can rotate the planes as you wish, and using the arrow just pull the view in and out to create the section view that you want. So if we zoom in and have a look at this, you'll see that I can grab a section view through the corridor, just dragging the arrow in and out. And we can also section this in height using the Z plane. So I can get a view of the height difference that exists in the model. If I select the sheet view in the Autodesk viewer, as you would expect, it loads up the layout view from Autocad, and again it's a faithful reproduction of that layout view. Let's go back to the Civil 3D model. You'll notice now if I refresh my shared views panel, I can see that I have comments available on these views, and I can expand that and look at those comments, and I can mark them as having been resolved if I want to. If I click on one and go back into the viewer, again we can select any of these comments and look at the corresponding view. If I want to actually share these views with others, there is a shared option on the toolbar here, and I can copy the link for that view and email that or share that with somebody else, and they can then have access to this shared view. By default, the views are shared for 30 days. I think this is a great tool, particularly for doing markup and review from your Civil 3D model without having to subscribe to any additional tools. So now let's take a look at the Autocad Draw and Compare tool. I've got two Civil 3D files open here, Road Layout Revisions 1 and 2. And they're both showing me an Autodesk vehicle tracking roundabout. If I go to the Collaborate ribbon and choose Draw and Compare, I can compare my Revision 1 drawing with the Revision 2 drawing. This creates a new drawing that overlays both on top of each other, and you'll see that I get a ribbon to control the Draw and Compare. So for example, I can turn off what's in drawing 1, shown in green, or what's in drawing 2, which is shown in red, and I can also control the draw order, putting one in front of the other if I want to. The black items are common to both, so I can turn off those items that are common to both, and I can just see now the changes between the two files. As I zoom out on this file, you'll notice that we have some revision clouds placed around where the changes occur. You can change the margin on these revision clouds to home in on individual areas that may have changed. If I look across onto the other side again, you can see it's compared the profile views here and is highlighting where the views are different. So this draw and compare tool is actually quite a neat way of checking what has changed between two versions of the same model file, and it can be used with Civil 3D, although some of the objects aren't split up as much as we might like. So let's take a look now at improvements that have been made to importing objects from Autodesk InfraWorks to Civil 3D. Here in this InfraWorks model we have a roundabout, and this roundabout junction has been added to these two component roads. If I hover on the component road here, you can see the individual components of this road, and if we just pan to the top of the model, you'll see there is a bridge, and at the far end there is another junction, but this time this is just a plain T-junction. So in Civil 3D we can go to the InfraWorks ribbon and open that model. So we'll choose the SQLite file for that model, and it will ask us to set the coordinate system, so I'm just going to set that to British National Grid. We don't want to bring the whole model in, so we'll use this aerial image just to select the area we're interested in. And when you import these objects from InfraWorks, you get to choose which types of objects you want to bring in. In this case, I'm choosing design objects, and you can refine the selection in here. You'll notice I've got design and component roads turned on. I've also got intersections, bridges and roundabouts at the bottom there. So let's open that model, and it will start importing those entities. If you look at the bottom of the Civil 3D screen, bottom left, you may notice that as it's importing, it is actually rebuilding corridors. So it's going to create corridors from those component roads. Let's just turn off the aerial image and have a look and see what we've actually got. So if I zoom in here, you can see the roundabout. You can also see the two component roads. If I select this item here, this is in fact a corridor, and we can look at that in the object viewer. As I zoom in, you can see that it has been created from a full assembly, so it's using a default assembly based on the component road to create that corridor, but of course you can edit the assembly and modify that. This object here is a vehicle tracking roundabout, and I can look at all the roundabout properties and amend them as I need to. We can also have a look here at the corridor for that roundabout. So not only did it create the vehicle tracking roundabout, but it built the corridor for it as well. And we can see that corridor in the viewer. The roundabout that you get from InfraWorks will be the same standard of roundabout that you chose in InfraWorks, and that's what you get in Civil 3D when you import it. We can also have a look at the surface for that roundabout. So if I choose the surface, and we can see there is in fact a gap here in this surface, and that's due to the arm of the roundabout not extending far enough. So because this is a vehicle tracking roundabout that it's created, I can of course just select it, and using the grips in this case I can move the blend point out and get that transition correct. If I look also in Prospector, you can see that it's created some intersections for us, and there are some properties to those intersections. If we just go and have a look at the intersection that it's created. So what you'll see here is, although it created the intersection, it didn't fully build the corridor model for it. And I think there may be an issue here with the alignments in InfraWorks not being accurately connected together, and so it didn't build the full junction, but you could of course amend the intersection and rebuild it. So this is a really big improvement in the importing of roads from InfraWorks to Civil 3D, giving us intelligent components that we can refine and edit as we need to. That brings us to the end of our look at the 2019 features for Civil 3D. If you need more information on these or other Autodesk 2019 products, please visit our website www.excitec.co.uk. Thank you for watching.